Hi, I'm Ben Tillum, and I'm here with Jonathan Latham, head of the Bioscience Resource Project. Can you explain to me what the Human Genome Project is?
Yeah, sure. So we wrote something recently about the Human Genome Project that essentially it's a project to distract people from environmental causes of illnesses. So it originated from the tobacco industry in the 1980s. And what the tobacco industry did was they realized they were facing litigation. And so they used huge sums of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, to fund human genetics. And basically the idea was to confuse the public into thinking that there were genetic predispositions to lung cancer. And so this project has basically has rolled merrily along using hundreds of billions of dollars of public money and has convinced people that causes of illness and mental health have genetic origins when there's actually no evidence for that.
Is that true for all illnesses, or
Yeah,
most, or some?
there are some exceptions. So there's the BRCA1, the cancer gene, for
Right.
example. I mean, the reason you hear about it all the time is because that's pretty much the only one.
Can you please tell me what your background is and what your organization is about and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah. So we do quite a lot of the project's work is to do with food and agriculture. So I used to be a genetic engineer, and genetic engineering is basically taking genes from other species and then using either a particle gun to blast those genes into the genome of a new crop, say a papaya or a lettuce or a corn, and or you can use a bacterium to get that DNA in there. So you basically artificially make a segment of DNA that you think will do what you want it to do, and then you put it into that genetically engineered crop, and then by testing it in the field, you try to figure out whether it's done what you think it's done, and then you're in a position to sell it to the public.
Now, is this dangerous? Is there any evidence of good, bad, or indifferent to somebody's health?
There is evidence in both directions, and the one of the interesting things about this whole project is that the U.S. FDA doesn't test genetically modified crops for human safety. So in actual fact, there's very little evidence out there one way or another about the safety of these crops. So essentially, they're entering the food supply in a pretty much unregulated and uncontrolled manner. And so we do, as a project, have concerns about the safety. There is some evidence that these crops can be bad for you. There's evidence for immunological harm. There's theoretical evidence that new technologies that the biotech industry is introducing will be bad for people. And there's evidence from various sources that the nutrient content of these crops can be wildly different from their parents, for example. So that would obviously be a problem if they've got no iron or something like that in them.
What are the main crops that are being genetically engineered today?
The main crops that genetic engineers have focused on have been corn, soybeans, cotton, the major commodity crops. They haven't really, apart from the odd foray into things like tomatoes and papayas, they haven't genetically modified most crops. So we're talking, lettuce, for example, has never been genetically modified. And sometimes that's due to technical problems. Right. But it's also due to the fact that the companies are concentrating on high profit industries, but also where the public is not eating the crop directly. Because there's a perception that, people are happy enough to have it fed to animals, but maybe they don't want to eat it themselves.
We have a guest speaker coming here to Ithaca this week. Can you explain what she's coming to talk about?
Yep. The person that we've invited to Ithaca is called Winona Horta, and she is the executive director of Food and Water Watch, which is a DC-based consumer rights organization. And they focus on food issues. They focus on getting access to organic, sustainably produced food. And they also do quite a lot of work around fracking and natural gas.
Is there any evidence that genetic engineering is affecting the health of the population?
It's very hard to get that kind of evidence.
Right.
I mean, the health of the population changes
right.
on a regular basis. The trends are always going up or they're going down. There's more autism, for example, than there's been in the past, it seems like. So it's very difficult to pin down the effects on people because or the experiments on genetically modified organisms. When people have fed these to animals, what essentially those experiments are limited because they're telling you about what happens to that species of animal or that the strain of that species of animal, and when it's fed that particular crop and in that combination of ingredients, et cetera, and a lot of those things are going to be different from when people actually eat it.
Is there any way to tell what foods are genetically engineered and what foods are not?
In this country, no. In many other countries of the world, it's required to be labeled.
So it's almost like organic or inorganic in other parts of countries. It's labeled whether or not.
Yes. Yeah, there'll be a little sign on there somewhere saying contains genetically modified ingredients.
Do you know if there's a reason why we don't do that?
Well, basically lobbying from the food industry and the seed industry and Monsanto and Syngenta.
Got it. Is there anything else you would like to add, discuss?
Well, I would like to encourage people to go to our website. I mean, our site, independentsciencenews.org, is a non-profit science news site. And the reason we started it is because science is increasingly being used as propaganda. To push ideas is probably a better way to describe it. To push ideas that work for companies. So the Human Genome Project that I was discussing earlier.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.